because prison right around the corner, and death is the next step. So, you know what I mean? We just taking a smile.
Looks like that ominous prophecy from Lil Bibby's father just came true. After getting snitched on by his own crew and betrayed by his own father in court, word is Ksoo just got killed in prison. So is this 6 block getting their get back? A lot is happening right now. Let me break it down. The rise and fall of a Jacksonville drill king. Now, for those of y'all who ain't familiar with the Jacksonville scene, let me paint the picture for you. Jacksonville, Florida, Duval County, been breeding some of the hardest drill rappers in the game. We talking about cats like Young Gene Ace, Julio Fulio, Spinnabins, and of course our main character today, Ksoo. But this ain't just about music. This is about a war that's been tearing through the city's streets for years, leaving bodies, broken families, and destroyed communities in its wake. Hakeem Armani Robinson, that's Ksoo's government name, was born around 1998 or 1999, making him just 26 years old as we speak. See, this wasn't just some kid who chose the wrong path. This was a young man who inherited a legacy of criminality. His father, Abdul Robinson Sr., who goes by Blue, has been labeled by police as the leader of ATK, Ace's Top Killers, a group that law enforcement considers a violent drug trafficking organization linked to over 15 murders.
You gotta understand, Ksoo dad been killed. Like, this been like that. You ain't with no, this wasn't working at no car shop.
Let me break down the family tree for y'all, because understanding these connections is crucial to understanding how deep this tragedy goes. Willie Addison, known as Boss Goon, was Ksoo's half-brother. This cat had just gotten out after serving 10 years for burglary and perjury when his life got cut short in January 2019. He was gunned down outside Paradise Gentlemen's Club, and according to the streets and the prosecutors, this killing was the spark that lit the fuse on everything that came after. Now, Ksoo also had a brother, Abdul Robinson Jr., who's currently 27 and facing his own murder charges. Then there's his cousin Leroy Whitaker Jr., known as ATK Scotty, who's sitting right next to Ksoo in court as a co-defendant. This whole situation is a family affair gone wrong, and that's what makes it so devastating. But let's talk about Ksoo's come up in the rap game, because Shorty had legitimate talent. Ksoo's debut album, Violent Child, dropped in 2020, featuring tracks like Been Dead and the title track Violent Child. But it was singles like Can't Think, featuring J-Day Youngin, that really put him on the map. This track alone racked up over 215,800 plays on SoundCloud, showing that when it came to making music that resonated with the streets, Ksoo had that special sauce. The young man also dropped heat with other established artists. His collaboration 5 Stars with Chicago drill legend King Von showed that his reach was extending beyond Jacksonville. He was connecting with the broader drill movement that was taking over hip-hop. Tracks like Step on Some with J-Day Youngin pulled in 1.3 million SoundCloud plays, proving that Ksoo wasn't just another local rapper. He had the potential to break out nationally. But here's where things get dark, and this is what separates Ksoo's story from your typical come-up tale. His music wasn't just inspired by street life. According to prosecutors, it was a confession booth. Tracks with titles like Dead Ops and lyrics that allegedly referenced specific murders became the foundation of the case against him. The most controversial piece was his album cover for Bibby Out. This cover featured images of deceased rivals, including 16-year-old Adrian Bibby Gaynor Jr., who was Julio Fulio's cousin and a member of the opposing KTA gang.
What ultimately happened with your friend Bibby?
Little bro, he was like, this, like, that's my little twin, like, you know, I got him tatted on my face. Like, that's my little bro.
The fact that a grown man would put a dead 16-year-old's picture on his album cover and then rap about smoking Bibby shows just how toxic this whole situation had become. The Jacksonville drill scene that Ksoo was part of wasn't just about music. It was about a genuine war between two factions that were using rap as both propaganda and evidence against each other. The ATK, Ace's Top Killers, versus KTA, Kill Them All feud has been responsible for over 20 deaths since 2018, making it one of the most deadly rap beefs in modern hip-hop history. This whole thing started to really pop off in June 2018 when KTA members allegedly ambushed Young Gene Ace and his crew at a hotel in Georgia. They killed Ace's brother Trayvon Bullard and 2 others, while Ace himself survived despite taking 8 bullets. That attack set off a cycle of retaliation that would eventually consume Ksoo's life. But the event that really sealed Ksoo's fate happened in January 2019. His half-brother Boss Goon was murdered outside Paradise Gentlemen's Club, and according to the prosecution, this is what turned Ksoo from a rapper into an alleged killer. killer. The streets were saying that KTA was responsible for Boss Goon's death, and in the code of the streets, that meant somebody had to pay. The way Jacksonville drill works is different from other scenes. These artists weren't just talking about fictional violence. They were using their platforms to mock dead rivals and glorify real murders. It's like they turned their whole lives into a reality show where the consequences were life and death. And unfortunately for Ksoo, the cameras never stopped rolling. Ksoo's career was cut short when he was arrested in March 2020 for the February 2019 murder of Adrian Bibby Gaynor Jr., and then again in September 2020 for the January 2020 murder of Charles Lil Buck McCormick Jr. These weren't random killings. According to prosecutors, these were calculated acts of revenge in the ongoing ATK-KTA war. The first victim, Bibby, was just 16 years old. Let that sink in for a minute. A 16-year-old kid, someone's baby, caught up in grown folks' business and allegedly murdered by someone who was barely an adult himself. The shooting happened at Hilltop Village Apartments, where Bibby was sitting in a gazebo when two masked gunmen allegedly approached with semi-automatic rifles.
I go on Facebook. A little boy just got killed in Hilltop, like 16. So I'm like, they're like, yeah, he had on a uniform or a gray sweater, burgundy shirt. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I just hang up the phone. One of my god brothers walking the house. He like, bro, they say Bibby dead, bro.
What makes this whole situation even more twisted is how Ksoo allegedly celebrated afterwards. He made that Bibby Out album cover with the dead child's picture, and his lyrics constantly reference smoking Bibby. Even if we're talking about artistic expression, there's something deeply disturbing about a grown man celebrating the death of a 16-year-old in his music. The second murder, Lil Buck, was equally tragic, but for different reasons. Charles Lil Buck McCormick Jr. was 23 years old and had made a diss track mocking Boss Goon's death. According to prosecutors, this diss track is what motivated Ksoo and his crew to hunt him down. The alleged murder happened at Dames Point Plaza in January 2020, exactly 1 year after Boss Goon's death. Prosecutors claim that Ksoo and his accomplices used public records to track down Lil Buck's address, stalked him, and then ambushed him at the plaza. After the shooting, they allegedly fled in a stolen car, leading to a high-speed chase that ended in a crash. Now here's where Ksoo's story becomes a cautionary tale about the power of social media and self-incrimination. Instead of keeping quiet after these alleged murders, Ksoo continued to brag about them in his music and on social media. He posted pictures of Lil Buck with captions like "bye bye" and continued to reference both victims in his lyrics.
But like, not even with his situation, but with rappers, like, that's how people get caught up nowadays, the internet, you know?
This brings us to one of the most controversial aspects of Ksoo's case, the use of rap lyrics as evidence in criminal trials. This is a practice that's been criticized by legal scholars and hip-hop advocates as racially biased, since rap music is disproportionately used against defendants compared to other genres. But in Ksoo's case, prosecutors argue that his lyrics weren't just artistic expression, they were confessions. Songs like Ksoo Homicide and social media posts mocking his alleged victims became key pieces of evidence in the investigation. The question becomes, where's the line between artistic expression and self-incrimination? Up next, we're going to dive deep into the trials, the evidence, and most importantly, we're going to talk about the moment that shocked the hip-hop world, when Ksoo's own father took the stand and identified his son as a killer. Family betrayal and the trial that shook hip-hop. Ksoo has been locked up in Duval County Jail since September 10th, 2020, facing 2 separate first-degree murder charges that could put him away for life. And let me tell you, his time behind bars hasn't been easy. His attorney, Chris DeCoste, has been fighting the jail system over Ksoo's housing conditions, claiming his client has been placed in what they're calling a mental health ward without justification. Ksoo's been claiming that this placement has limited his ability to communicate with his legal team, potentially messing with his trial preparation. He even alleged that corrections officers body slammed him back in 2020, and there's supposedly video footage of this incident. But the jail officials deny most of these claims, saying he's just under standard investigation protocols. Now let's talk about the evidence that prosecutors have built their case on, because this is where Ksoo's story becomes a masterclass in how not to move when you're allegedly involved in street activities. First up, we got the self-incrimination through music. Prosecutors are using tracks like Ksoo Homicide and Bibby Out as key evidence. They're arguing that Ksoo wasn't just making music. He was confessing to murders and then distributing those confessions to millions of people on streaming platforms. The Bibby Out album cover alone is damaging enough. Putting dead rivals' pictures on your album cover and then rapping about smoking them is the kind of move that makes prosecutors' jobs easy. But it gets worse when you consider that one of those rivals was a 16-year-old kid. Then we got the social media posts. Ksoo allegedly posted pictures of Lil Buck with captions like "bye bye" and made other posts that seemed to celebrate the murders. In today's digital age, your social media is basically a diary that the whole world can read. And unfortunately for Ksoo, prosecutors are reading it like a confession letter. But the physical evidence is where things get really serious. In the Lil Buck case, investigators found Ksoo's fingerprint on a Glock handgun that was left behind in the stolen Nissan Altima used as the getaway car. They also have dashcam footage of the shooting and a 3D forensic analysis that allegedly matches the shooter's height and build to Ksoo. But perhaps the most damaging evidence comes from the people who were supposedly closest to Ksoo, his own crew. Dominique Butta Barner, who was allegedly the getaway driver in the Lil Buck murder, flipped on Ksoo and took a plea deal. Instead of facing life in prison, Barner's looking at a maximum of 20 years in exchange for his testimony. Barner's testimony was detailed and damaging. He told the court about how they used the Duval County Clerk website to find Lil Buck's address, how they stalked him, and how Ksoo allegedly chased Lil Buck around the building while firing multiple shots. He described the high-speed chase that followed, the crash, and how they abandoned the guns before Ksoo's father came to pick them up. Now, Barner's testimony is problematic for several reasons. First, he's a cooperating witness with everything to gain from his testimony. Second, the defense has been attacking his credibility, pointing out that he's essentially a paid witness who's getting a reduced sentence in exchange for his story. But the prosecution argues that his testimony is corroborated by physical evidence and other witnesses. The defense strategy has been interesting to watch. Ksoo's attorney, Christopher DeCoste, has been arguing that the evidence is largely circumstantial and that prosecutors are misinterpreting artistic expression as literal fact. DeCoste pointed out the hypocrisy in using Ksoo's lyrics against him while not treating Lil Buck's diss track the same way.
Charles McCormick, to the best of your knowledge, was he rapping about something that he was never involved in?
As far as I can say, I can't say he had any involvement in the murder.
You can't say that he had any
I'd say
involvement.
that.
So it's okay for Charles McCormick, but it's not okay for the guy.
The defense has also been challenging the physical evidence, arguing that the video footage doesn't clearly show Ksoo as the shooter and that witness descriptions don't match his physical appearance. They've pointed out discrepancies, such as witnesses describing the shooter as being around 5'8", while Ksoo is over 6 feet tall. But all of this evidence, all of these witnesses, all of these legal arguments became secondary on July 28, 2025, when something happened that nobody saw coming, at least not to this extent. That's the day when Abdul Robinson Sr., Ksoo's own father, took the witness stand and delivered testimony that sent shockwaves through the courtroom and the hip-hop community. Abdul Sr., who's 53 years old and allegedly the leader of the ATK gang, had been charged as an accessory after the fact in the Lil Buck murder. He was facing the possibility of life in prison for allegedly helping his sons escape after the shooting and for disposing of evidence like firearms. But Abdul Sr. made a deal with the devil. He agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. Instead of life, he's looking at a maximum of 20 years. The man cited several reasons for his cooperation.
I have a number of reasons.
What are they?
I got some health issues. I got 2 6-year-olds and an 8-year-old daughter. And, when my 8-year-old daughter asked me when I'm gonna come take her to the daddy-daughter dance,
He continued.
when she asked me over each year when I'm gonna come take her there, and I keep letting her down. Then my 6-year-old son, when he asked me if I'm gonna come to his football games, come take him fishing. My other 6-year-old, he asked me when I'm gonna come see him, when he begging me, please come see me, daddy.
But the most devastating moment came when prosecutors showed Abdul Sr. the dash cam and surveillance footage of the Lil Buck shooting. When asked if he could identify the masked shooter in the video, Abdul Sr. looked directly at his son and said, "My son." He confirmed again when shown a still image. "That's my son, Hakeem." The courtroom was reportedly silent as this played out. Here was a father looking his own child in the eye and identifying him as a killer. Abdul Sr. also testified about picking up the suspects after the shooting, hiding guns in his car, and later disposing of evidence. Abdul Sr. called his decision to testify the hardest decision I ever had to make in my life.
Cooperating in this case, something that is easy for you to do.
No, this is the most hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life.
During cross-examination, the defense tried to attack Abdul Sr.'s motives and credibility. They pointed out that his plea deal required him to identify Ksoo, and that without this cooperation, he'd be facing life in prison. When asked about prioritizing himself, Abdul Sr. admitted to the self-preservation aspect. Self-love first, right? The reaction to this testimony was immediate and intense. Social media exploded with comments about the ultimate betrayal and debates about family loyalty versus accountability. Posts on X X, formerly Twitter, called it heartbreaking and the worst father ever. The hip-hop community was divided. Some saw it as a father teaching his son about consequences, while others viewed it as the worst kind of snitching. But perhaps the most powerful reaction came from another rapper who knows something about loyalty in the streets. Boosie Badass, the Louisiana legend, had some strong words about Abdul Sr.'s decision to testify. Boosie was heated when he talked about the situation.
Like the dad ain't no. You think this a camp coach? Ksoo dad is like he like that.
Okay.
Like he's like that. He been like that.
Boosie went even harder.
They're laughing at you over beer and shots right now. We're making that mother turn on his own seed. He's turning on his own boy. Then they're gonna kill it when he go back there and we let him out.
When asked what he would do in the same situation, Boosie was clear.
So if your own son got you caught up in a murder that he committed, you would do 30 years over your child?
If they convict me, yes. If we don't talk, they what? What the Make them do their job.
Boosie's reaction represents the old school street mentality that you never cooperate with law enforcement, especially against your own family. But Abdul Sr.'s situation represents the reality that many people face when they're looking at life in prison and have young children who need them. The testimony also brought up another tragic element of the story. Abdul Sr. emotionally described holding his son Boss Goon as he died in 2019. I didn't want him to feel like he died alone. This moment humanized a man who had been described as a gang leader and showed the pain that this whole cycle of violence had brought to the family. On July 29, 2025, the state rested its case after 5 days of testimony. The prosecution had presented their evidence: the forensics, the witness testimony, the social media posts, the rap lyrics, and most damaging of all, the identification by Ksoo's own father. The defense began presenting their case, calling witnesses to challenge the state's narrative. They're trying to create reasonable doubt about the identification, challenge the reliability of cooperating witnesses, and argue that the prosecutors are misinterpreting artistic expression as criminal confession. But the damage from Abdul Sr. testimony might be irreversible. In a case that was already built on circumstantial evidence and witness testimony, having the defendant's own father identify him as the killer is the kind of moment that can decide a trial. But this story isn't over yet. Up next, we're going to talk about what this case means for hip-hop, the broader issues around using rap lyrics as evidence, and what the future might hold for Ksoo and the Jacksonville drill scene. When hip-hop becomes evidence and families fall apart. The reality is that Ksoo's story represents a perfect storm of everything that's wrong with how the streets, the music industry, and the justice system interact in 2025. We're living in an era where your Instagram posts can become evidence, your rap lyrics can be used as confessions, and your own family members might choose their freedom over your loyalty. Let's start with the elephant in the room: the use of rap lyrics as evidence in criminal trials. This isn't just happening to Ksoo, it's a nationwide problem that's affecting hundreds of young artists, mostly young black men across the country. Research shows that rap lyrics have been used as evidence in nearly 700 cases since the late 1980s, and the pattern is disturbing. Studies have found that when identical violent lyrics are labeled as rap versus country or rock, juries are more likely to see the rap lyrics as literal and offensive. This suggests that there's a racial and cultural bias baked into how we interpret different forms of artistic expression. Legal scholars like University of Georgia professor Andrea Dennis have found that rap is uniquely used to evoke bias against defendants, with violent lyrics in rap being seen as more credible evidence of criminal intent than similar content in other genres. This is the same system that rarely questions whether Johnny Cash actually shot a man in Reno just to watch him die, but will use a young black rapper's lyrics as evidence that he committed murder. In Ksoo's case, the prosecution has made his music a centerpiece of their argument. Songs like Ksoo Homicide and social media posts are being presented not as artistic expression, but as confessions. The problem is that this approach ignores the hyperbolic nature of hip-hop and the tradition of braggadocio that's been part of the culture since its inception. But here's where Ksoo's case gets complicated. Unlike a lot of other cases where lyrics are used as evidence, Ksoo's music allegedly references specific real-world events and victims. The Bibby Out album cover featuring actual deceased individuals and lyrics that allegedly celebrate specific murders make it harder to argue that this is just artistic expression. This raises uncomfortable questions about where the line should be drawn. Should artistic expression be protected even when it allegedly glorifies real violence against specific individuals? Bibby's mother has spoken about the pain of hearing her dead 16-year-old son mocked in rap songs, and that perspective can't be ignored in this conversation. The legal system is struggling to keep up with how hip-hop has evolved. Some states, like California, have passed laws requiring courts to consider the artistic and creative context before admitting rap lyrics as evidence. New York and federal lawmakers are considering similar protections, but Florida doesn't have these safeguards yet. This brings us to another aspect of Ksoo's case that highlights how social media has changed the game completely. In the past, if you committed a crime, the smart move was to lay low, keep your mouth shut, and let your lawyer handle everything. But in the social media age, especially for young artists trying to build their brand, the temptation to document everything and engage with your audience can be overwhelming. Ksoo's alleged social media posts, including pictures of victims with captions like "bye bye," show how social media has become a double-edged sword for young artists. On one hand, it's the primary way to build a fan base and promote your music. On the other hand, everything you post can potentially be used against you in court. The Jacksonville drill scene that Ksoo was part of represents the extreme end of this problem, the ATK versus KTA feud has been called one of the most prolific in modern hip-hop, with over 20 deaths linked to the rivalry. What makes it unique is how intertwined the music and the violence have become. Tracks like Youngeen Ace's "Who I Smoke" have gotten over 18 million views while explicitly mocking dead rivals. The song uses Vanessa Carlton's "1,000 Miles" as the backing track while listing names of deceased KTA members. This isn't subtle. It's a direct provocation that's designed to generate both streams and street credibility. The response tracks, like Julio Fulio's "When I See You," escalated the tensions even further. These weren't just diss tracks. They were musical declarations of war that helped fuel real-world violence. Ksoo's music fit perfectly into this ecosystem. His tracks weren't just about generic street life. They allegedly referenced specific murders and specific victims. This made them incredibly compelling content for fans who were invested in the drama, but it also made them incredibly damaging evidence for prosecutors. Now let's talk about what Ksoo's case reveals about family dynamics and street culture. The image of Abdul Sr. identifying his son as a killer has become iconic, but it also represents a broader breakdown of traditional street codes and family loyalty. In the old days of organized crime, the code was simple. You never cooperate with law enforcement, period. Family members were expected to take their charges, do their time, and keep their mouths shut. But Ksoo's case shows how that code has eroded in the face of modern realities. Abdul Sr.'s decision to testify wasn't just about avoiding a life sentence. It was about his 3 young children who need their father. This is a man in his 50s with failing health who has to choose between loyalty to his adult son and responsibility to his minor children. The hip-hop community's reaction to this decision has been telling. Boozie's passionate response represents the traditional street viewpoint that you never cooperate, regardless of the consequences. But other voices in the community have been more understanding, pointing out that Abdul Sr. was trying to make the best of an impossible situation. This generational divide reflects broader changes in how street culture operates. The older generation often maintains stricter codes about loyalty and non-cooperation, while younger people are more likely to make pragmatic decisions based on their individual circumstances. But there's another layer to this that we need to address: the cycle of violence that Ksoo's case represents. This whole situation started with the murder of his half-brother Boss Goon in January 2019. According to prosecutors, that murder motivated Ksoo to allegedly kill Bibby and Lil Buck in retaliation. But Boss Goon's murder was itself retaliation for earlier violence. The whole ATK versus KTA feud can be traced back to the June 2018 ambush that killed Youngeen Ace's brother and friends. That attack was retaliation for something else, which was retaliation for something before that. What we're looking at is a cycle of violence that's been perpetuating itself for years, with young men like Ksoo getting caught up in beef that started before they were even adults. Bibby was only 16 when he was allegedly killed, and Ksoo was barely in his early 20s when these alleged murders took place. This raises questions about accountability and intervention. How do you break a cycle of violence when it's become so entrenched that it's passed down through families and neighborhoods? Ksoo grew up in what law enforcement has described as a crime family environment, so in some ways, his path was predetermined by circumstances beyond his control. But at the same time, Ksoo made choices. He chose to allegedly participate in murders. He chose to brag about them in his music. He chose to post about them on social media. At what point does personal responsibility override environmental factors? The impact of this case extends beyond just Ksoo and his family. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office has threatened RICO charges against ATK following the 2024 murder of Julio Fulio, suggesting that law enforcement is getting more serious about treating these rap collectives as criminal organizations. The broader implications of this case will likely outlast whatever happens to Ksoo personally. His story has become a cautionary tale about the dangers of mixing street credibility with social media, the risks of using real violence as content, and the devastating consequences when family loyalty breaks down under legal pressure. For families and communities dealing with cycles of violence, Abdul Sr. Sr.'s decision to testify represents both a betrayal of traditional codes and a pragmatic choice in an impossible situation. The reaction to his testimony shows how divided the community is about what loyalty and family responsibility mean in the modern era. The real tragedy isn't just that these lives were lost or destroyed, it's that this pattern keeps repeating itself in cities across America. Until we address the root causes of these cycles of violence, we're going to keep seeing stories like Ksoo's, and families are going to keep being torn apart by impossible choices between loyalty and survival. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other awesome videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.